dreamland and reality. Somewhat similar to writing, especially when we talk about fiction. We need to strike a balance between non-fiction and fiction so as to reach out to readers and strike the right chord. Expression, elucidation, backed by a bit of evidence is what we seek when we read a book or a story. Also, that is what we speak through words when we write a story, isn't it? So it's all about equilibrium. When we talk of equilibrium, who else than a woman can guide us? Well, today the topic of discussion is importance of non-fiction research in fiction writing, and we have amongst us a celebrated author, a perfect woman of substance, I would say, Sharmishta Guptu. She is a historian and has acquired her degree of PhD from the University of Chicago. She has authored a monograph named Bengali Cinema and Another Nation, and has also curated Flashback, 175 Years of Indian Cinema with Times of India. She also happens to be an editor of book series and journal by name Southeast Asian History and Research. Recently, my dear friends, she has shifted her gears from being a historian to fiction writing. Welcome, Sharmishta. Could you please say a few words about your work?
Yes, thank you, Swapna. I'm really glad to be here today, and I've been made to feel so welcome by the organizers. I'm really touched. I'm very glad to be here. And I have been a historian. Again, we are going to keep talking about this, but just a brief introduction. I have been a historian for the last 15 years, and my work is on Indian cinema. I started out by working on Bengali cinema, which is my, it's the region that I specialize in. But I have also done a lot of work on Hindi, Bombay Hindi cinema. And so all these years I was a historian, and then I wanted to write fiction, and I want to talk, I'm going to respond to Swapna's questions about why I decided to move. And it's not like I moved away from being a historian, I'm still a historian, but why I decided to also write fiction. And I'm really glad to be here today, and I was told that this was going to be like a workshop, an interactive session.
Yes.
And both Swapna and I agreed that we would try to, we would not only talk between ourselves, but we would interact as much as possible with the audience. And I think there's lots of young people here who want to be writers, who are aspiring to be writers, and who are trying to find a balance between research and writing, whether it's fiction or non-fiction. So can we kind of start off with a bit of an audience connect? 2 or 3
Absolutely.
young people from the audience. Could you please, just in the next 2 minutes, introduce yourselves and tell us if you are aspiring to be writers, fiction, non-fiction? 2 or 3 young people, quickly. Yes, please.
Hi. So my name is Bhavika Vasandani, and I wish to explore the field of content writing and creative writing. And the reason why I'm here is because I wanted to know how in your life have you connected fiction to any of your books? Like how has it, how have you connected your expertise in history to any of the books that you've written? And if you can help me on that matter.
Great.
Talk through in this session. So thank you very much for your question. Maybe 1 or 2 other people can introduce themselves. Yes, please.
Okay, great.
So I wanted to ask you, ma'am, being a woman, I can't write a novel or a story connected with men. So I suppose for a boy I can't write a story. I can write only for girls or women area. So how to go in that kind of imagination, for which we are not living in that life, but we want to write. I want to explore that area.
So I think she's really trying to speak about, what...
I was talking to you in Author's Lounge.
Yeah, so how do we write about things which we haven't experienced?
Right.
Okay, that's a very important question which Swapna and I also discussed this morning. We will take you through that through the session. We will give you.
Just now, 16 years young. I'm also interested in writing, especially creative writing. I have my poetry and creative writing blog also at Kalam, Khayal or Main. So ma'am, my question to you is like, I'm working on mental health. I want to write something on mental health. I've been doing research and all. So my question is also as she was asked, that how to connect those two things. Means I don't want to write a book which is kind of informative. I want to write a story, but which will impact which will focus on mental health. So I have a storyline. I have that means research on mental health, but the problem I was facing is just like when a number of point of views came in front of me, so it became really complicated.
I'm not it out.
No, it's complicated to came to a conclusion. I mean, this.
Sure, we'll address this. Let's come back to So, why did you take up fiction?
Okay, so as I said, I was a historian and I was working in the realm of academia. Why I decided to move to fiction? When my first book came out in 2010, I was doing book readings at various literary festivals, and from that point going forward, I realized that there is a reading public and an audience, and my work is on the history of Indian cinema. I realized that there is a reading public which wants to know, which is a reading public beyond the academic realm, because academia is a much smaller space and there is a much broader readership. And there are people who actually want to know this research, this history of cinema in my case, but it's a more general readership, so it has to be told to them in a form which is more accessible to them, in a narrative style, possibly in the form of fiction, which I am doing now, keeping all the research intact, but in a form that is more accessible to people and which is non-academic. So that is why through all these years, I realized that, and the fiction was in my mind while I was doing my various academic projects. And so it has now materialized in the form of this book, new book, launched last year, Menoka Has Hanged Herself. And it is fiction. It is set against the film industry of 1937. This is a point in the history of cinema where silent films have just become the talkies. This is the first decade of the talkies in India, where a lot of things were changing. For instance, from the silent era, new stars were coming because suddenly you had to have a singing voice. You had to speak, you had to know Hindi or the regional languages. So previously, the Eurasian actors and actresses had to be there, were there in the silent era. They were very good looking. But come sound, they couldn't speak Hindi or they couldn't speak the regional languages. So, or some of them did not have good singing voices. So out they go, and a new class and breed of actors and actresses who had good singing voices, who could speak Hindi or Bengali or Marathi or the regional languages. So this is the era of the 30s, the first decade of the talkies. That is where this book is set. And it is based on all the research that I have done all of this time. So Swapna asked me why I decided to move from academic writing, not move actually, I'm still as much a historian, but why I decided to also write fiction. So this was one of the reasons, to get to a larger reading public who is interested to know this history, this research, but in a different way, not because academic writing is very different, not everyone is an academic. The other thing, and a very important thing to keep in mind about research is a very layered thing. You go to the archive, you have your documents, you read the documents, they are there. Other thing is you can do an ethnography, you can interview people. There is another layer of research which is very, very hazy, which sometimes people are willing to tell you things which they will not want you to document, or which they will not go on tape, they will not let you record it. So as a historian, it is very difficult to use that research, but at the same time it is your research and people have told you that, and that is where you can put it into fiction. For instance, let me tell you, in 1927-28, the colonial government, it was still the silent era of films. 1931 is when the first talkie was produced in India. So in 1927-28, the colonial government instituted a committee called the Cinematograph Inquiry Committee. And the committee went around taking evidence in 5 cities: Bombay, Kolkata, Lahore, Rangoon and Madras. And one of the predominant questions that the committee, the things that the committee was inquiring was, there was a moral panic around films. Are films corrupting society? Is it too much? Is there too much of sexual content in films? Are films a corrupting influence on the young people? This was one of the principal lines of inquiry of the committee. And when I have gone through the literature of that time, the journals, magazines that were being written in the mid 1930s, a predominant line is, we should produce respectable films. Films should be respectable. Is the film industry a safe place for women? So when people are consistently talking about such things, you can sense that there is an underbelly where things are happening which people are not speaking about. Is there sexual exploitation? Yes, there is sexual exploitation. People from that time, when I first started researching in 2000, people from that time hinted to me that there was an underbelly of the film industry where a lot of explicit sexual content was being produced, what we call now pornography, but it is not documented. People will not speak on record about it. How do you write about it? Sexual exploitation. Was there? Of course there was. Some of the biggest stars, Kanan Devi, she was the big star of the 1930s in Bengal National also. She has written in her autobiography much later hinted at the sexual exploitation that she faced. We're talking about it now. Then no one talked about it, but people have hinted about it. How do you document that? You can't do it in history, because history book has to have footnotes. It has to have quotes. People will hold you to it if you cannot back it up. But in fiction, no one will hold you to it. So, another reason for writing fiction is to get these stories to people, which I cannot write, write in my history, book, because it is not documented. But in fiction, it mixes with your imagination. You can write about these things in fiction, and that is also the research which needs to come to the audience.
So in a nutshell, we can say that you wanted the things to be conveyed to the people in more appealing way. So is that why you wanted the facts to be put in more elucidative way so that people connected to more? Sure, right? So moving forward on the same lines, in your book, it begins with a jarring note where Manapa has hanged herself, and in the entire rest of the book, she has been mentioned metaphorically. Yet, her persona, her behavior, her mannerisms have been conveyed to the perfection as to what she has gone through. So my question to you would be, how to paint a personality, an image of a personality, without spoon-feeding the readers, without directly giving them hard-hitting facts, because certain facts kind of jolt them, and they don't want to come out of that fictive dreams at times. So how do you subtly introduce such characters? How do you subtly introduce such incidents? How would you go researching about such incidents?
So, for instance, some things that you have not experienced, are you talking about that? Some things...
More so about the personality, about a character. A person, you would think of a character who's like your director in your story, if I may use, he seems to be a pervert, but you have not used the word pervert there, yet described his mannerisms so well.
See, let me say it in this way. Some people who know film history and have read my book have asked me, is so-and-so character based on so-and-so real-life person from that time?
Right.
So, yes, and obviously I'm not going to take any names because I have taken liberties in the book, if I have based a certain character on a certain historical personality, I've also taken liberties, I don't know what they were like in real life. You hear, again, that's where the role of gossip, rumor, historians have used that, when they have written, for instance, about the freedom movement, about Gandhi, they have written, how rumor figured Gandhi, Gandhi was like Gandhi Baba, how people identified with Gandhi. So with everything, gossip, rumor, these things come into play. So when I have written about these characters, it's not only what they were in public life. I have used my imagination, I have used You know how people used to gossip about them. So when you write fiction, that's how fiction writing is different. You know, you use your research, what is written in the public domain about these people, but you also use your imagination.
Right.
That's how you you plot and create a character, a complex character.
So for the personality traits, or for example now this director, would you recommend meeting a psychiatrist who deals with such people on and off? You know, just to understand their psyche better. Something like that, probably meeting more and more people who deal with such dark characters. You know.
Yes, so you're asking about the research that goes into
Yes.
Yes, of course. I mean, if it's historical fiction, then you have to go through the what was the journals, the periodicals of that time. You have to, if you are lucky enough, when I started researching in 2000, some people who were working, actors and actresses who were working in the 30s and 40s were still around. I was able to interview them. There's always the written, the publicity materials, or for instance, when you're plotting research, for instance, if you're writing about the 30s, so suppose someone has to pick up a telephone, you have to, and call someone. A question: oh, would there be phones in everyone's house? Would there be electric lights? We're not so sure. So what do? You go back to the newspapers and look through the pages where the advertisements appeared. And you'll be surprised to find what kind of a consumer culture there was at that time. It was more of a global economy like we are now than in the 60s or 70s when we were growing up, when it was more of a nationalized economy where there were only ambassador cars and just one or two brands. 1930s and 40s, when you have to plot, when you have to create your, just a living room, you're creating a living room in your book. How do you plot it? What furniture would there be? You have to actually research that way. You have to go to the newspapers, you have to go through the pages where the ads appeared. Everything, the departmental stores, it's like it was today, all European products. So that's how you do your research, that's how you plot and create, your situations in the book.
Go back to whatever media was available then and then research through it.
Yes.
That speaks about the Victorian desk and the ink part, which has been mentioned in the book.
Yes.
Truly. Let's move on to creating a situation, or rather recreating a situation. Manopa has hanged herself, definitely. Now, such a situation where hanging is described, you cannot, claim to experience it or witness it. These are difficult situations. Even for that matter, going to the Vaishyabari and all these are difficult situations to deal with. So how do you go researching about such a hypothetical situation which we have not experienced in life, right? For example, take an example of hanging for that matter.
Yes, some research is possible. Obviously, you can go to the library, you can go to the archive, you can look up the old records, or if people are living from that time, you can talk to them. Some research is possible. Some research might not be possible, or for instance, there are some passages of cruelty. In my book, there's this the villain who's a very cruel man, and he loves torturing. He tortures his own sister when she's a child, and he kills animals. Now, have I seen all of that? Have I seen animals being killed? And for instance, people who have known me have told me that you're not that kind of a person. How could you actually write such descriptions of cruelty? Not that I have seen them, but sometimes for writers, I think sometimes our worst fears actually it gets channeled into our writing. Are we afraid of cruelty to animals? As a mother, am I afraid of cruelty to children? Is that something when I read the papers every day? Cruelty to children, cruelty to little girls. Is that something I am afraid of? It's something I'm very afraid of. And that's where in fiction writing, as opposed to history writing, my imagination affect my fears. In history writing is more impersonal. It's supposed to be more impersonal. You're supposed to chronicle, analyze, document. Fiction is a more personal thing, and that's why fiction writing was so much of a rewarding experience for me, because your fears, your things that you cannot actually maybe deal with. Can I deal with a dead body in real life? No, but that's where my fears can be processed. When I'm writing about that, so that's why fiction writing. It's a very emotional experience, backed by research, of course. And so it's different, backed by research, but it's also where your emotions, your your affect or imagination come into play.
Right. I think that's a wonderful point. This worst fears, putting them into paper, channelizing them in your fiction writing plays an important role. Right. We are having this discussion about the balance between fiction and non-fiction. So, do you think different genres of fiction have this balance in different proportions? Like, say, for example, in a thriller fiction, would you give research as much importance as you would give it in a period or historical drama? Or there is the proportion would change? And how would you go about it?
Obviously, as I said, the research is important in fiction writing, as important as it is in history writing, but it's just how differently the research is pitched. In history, the research will show. You will have, as a historian, each page will have to be footnoted. Your research will have to show, and in fiction, the research has to be in the background. It's the backdrop. It helps you to create the backdrop. In my case, the period setting. But even if you're writing something very contemporary, for instance, most of you have lived in Nagpur all your lives. So if you had to write a crime thriller set in Nagpur, what is the first thing that comes up when you talk about a crime thriller? Police. Having lived in Nagpur all your life, do you know how the police works? No. So you have to research about the police. So whatever you're writing about, you do have to research. But at the same time, and publishers, for instance, when academics like me are transiting from history writing to fiction, sometimes they're very apprehensive that is it going to be very academic? Is she going to write in a very academic way? And publishers keep, they tend to be a little bit apprehensive because sometimes academics do tend to showcase their research too much. So, and again, there are very celebrated authors who are very celebrated fiction authors who are very research heavy, and they sell very well. So it depends. There are takers for everything. But for my part, when I write fiction, I prefer the research to be in the background for me to create that setting and not to interrupt the flow of the story, because after all, this is fiction. For me, if someone wants to read history, they should go to a history book, and this is fiction. So if you're reading it should not break the flow of the story. It should be in the background. At the same time, as I was telling Swapna, sometimes even in fiction, there can be pages where someone is describing a city or a milieu, and then your research comes into play. And that's enjoyable to read. It might not drag, it might not interrupt the flow of the story. And I think it's really up to the author to know where your research is not obstructing your story, it's not going overboard. It's up to the reader, and then different audiences, different readers like different things.
True. Describing a city, I remember Irving Wallace, who describes cities in a very beautiful way, despite of he writing thrillers, and which doesn't interrupt the flow, because the way he narrates it is beautiful. My next question was going to be the same, that being a historian, was it really difficult to balance out and write a fiction, and was there a fear of research overshadowing your story that you've answered right now?
It was a big challenge. It was a huge challenge to transit, because these are two very different kinds of writing. Academic writing is what I was groomed into, and then fiction is what I did for the love of it, and two entirely different things. And I had to go through, and I think at whatever stages of our life we are in, whether you're a starting off author or you're a published author. I was a historian, a published author, and then I moved to fiction writing. At every stage of our lives, we are learning new things, and fiction writing was an entirely new learning experience for me. I'm grateful to the editors who have helped me and helped me through that process, telling me here it's becoming too research heavy. It's coming across as an academic piece of writing. This is not going to work. And I went through several drafts, and I'm so glad how this book is now turned out, because people are telling me that we are learning from it, but at the same time we are enjoying it greatly.
That's a fantastic thing. What is your advice for people who are not historians yet they want to write a fiction book? So how heavily should they bank on the research, and where to start, where to end, if at all?
So you asked me a question, Swapna asked me a question, why research at all? And I'm
Yeah, we will come to that eventually.
Okay,
Yes, we'll come to that.
yeah. So, but for starting off people, why research at all? Well, you can start off writing by, there are authors who have done more research and written books. And as we were talking, this is an era of fake news. It's an era of flusy stuff, things just floating in the air. So you cannot research and even then write a book.
We had a session on WhatsApp University and fake news and non-fiction. So I guess buying a fiction should be a cakewalk in such an era of fake news and buying research.
It's not actually a cakewalk, because when and that's the thing, when you are living in your own world. When I was a historian, I'm still a historian, but when I was only writing history, I imagined that fiction writing is, what is it? It's just a story you have to tell. But when I started to write fiction, I realized that it is as logical, it has to be as structured, you have to make as many connections as an academic writing, otherwise it's not going to work, So you have to research everything. For instance, in my book, one of the characters, that is the time of steamships across the world. So one of my characters is going from Kolkata to the US, California, Los Angeles. So I had to actually do a lot of research to calculate what time would be taken on the ship, and what ports they would stop at, because now we don't, it's not, so it was different then. So every little detail has to be accounted for, otherwise it's not going to be real at all. So there are many authors who have written books without doing any research, and they might sell well for the moment because people just want to pick up something at the airport, but what's their shelf life? Unless, whether you write historical fiction, contemporaries, science fiction, whatever, unless your research is in place, it will not have a lasting impact or any shelf life.
So possibly a better rapport between a story and reader would be established with the help of research, if we may say so, right? So before we open the session to audience questions, just one last question. What take-home messages for aspiring writers, as to pertaining to research in fiction writing? Can you just enumerate 3-4 points which they would keep in mind when they start writing?
Yeah, like for aspiring writers, well, one thing I would say is, whether you're writing fiction, whether you're writing non-fiction, read more, read diversely. Reading is research, and read as widely and diversely as possible. Write, don't get a writer's block, keep writing, because when I was doing it, it's for all, it happens to people at all stages actually, not only when you're doing your PhD, but people get this writer's block, and then they keep, this thing is very important, they keep doing more and more and more research. I was doing my PhD at the University of Chicago, and then, you can take as many courses as you want. Courses are, all the courses are very good, they are all very specialized, so people, when they get a writing block, they keep taking courses and they keep telling themselves that, we are getting more and more and more specialized, but at some point you have to stop that, and you also have to get writing. So what I'm basically trying to say is, while it's important to keep reading all the time and educating yourself, we must also keep writing, and at some point when you're ready, you think, because there is nothing called perfection. I mean, at some stage you have to tell yourself, this is where I've got it, this is the best I can do at this time, and I'm going to put my work out there for whatever it's worth. So I think for young authors, do keep reading, researching, and writing on a regular basis, because unless, I'm not saying, some people say we are going to write 1,000 words a day, whatever happens, whether I report I am going to write 1,000 words a day, that doesn't work for me. It works for some people. Many celebrated authors write, a number of books, a number of words a day. That doesn't work for me. I'm a very, I write on some days, I just listen to music from that era, just to, get into the mode of it. So I tend to be a very temperamental writer, but at the same time, you have to also keep putting out your work. You can't stop writing. So don't get a writer's block, keep writing, keep reading.
Great. So thanks for that. So I think it's an ongoing process altogether. Reading, writing and research, they all go hand in hand. So audience?
Workshop, Swapna, congratulations to Swapna and Mishra. As you rightly said, and as said by Sigmund Freud, that the theory of unconscious, like your fears, your unconscious, they define your personality. So, do you feel that your fears or your personality, they get reflected in your writing somewhere?
Of course they do. Of course, definitely react to a certain situation. You know, sometimes as I would react to it, and oftentimes as maybe I'm not able to react in real life. Am I able to throw something at somebody? You know, when they really deserve it, sometimes they really deserve it. Am I able to do it? No. But I can, through my characters, it's often a very cathartic process to write, you know, fiction, because you can make your characters do what you can't do in real life.
Could be that, I guess. Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Language of the world. So in India, there are two extremes. Some people, they prefer a very simple language book, and some people actually want some intellectual books. So how do you strike the balance, the right choice of words?
Okay. You know, literary fiction, whatever. So it just depends what. It just depends who you're trying to cater to. There's, you know, a great flowering of even 15 years back. There was no popular fiction. Now there's so much of popular fiction. You know, the mythology and everything, which is meant for a much broader mass market. There is literary fiction, where the language is it's the difference of the language. It's research based. So I would tend to put myself more in the literary fiction. My work is in the literary fiction bracket. So there's something for everybody, and it just depends on who you want to cater to and what your interest is. And if you're catering to a larger popular readership, then you have to make your language simpler.
So define your audience and then probably choose your words and word, right? So.
While you said that as a historian you have taken liberties and you interviewed people who are alive, don't you think it can lead to a lot of personal biases? Because how that person treated you while you interviewed him, or so a lot of personal takes can be there. And don't you think that it can corrupt the history? Because history is basically a documentation of the facts. History is not fiction. So if you take personal liberties in history writing, don't you think you are really making a bhelpuri of history and fiction?
No, I didn't. I didn't say I took any personal liberties in history writing. That's something you actually cannot do in history writing. History writing has to be a very impersonal process, and in fact, history departments all over the world have tended to be very conservative. When I was doing my PhD, for instance, in the University of Chicago, my PhD was cut off 1960. I had to stop in 1960 because you're not supposed to come too close to your period. You know, because you tend to lose that. You might tend to lose the what do you call it? You might tend to become biased, as you said. So history department, that's the difference between history and anthropology. Anthropology is your current milieu, and history tends it tends to separate you from a period which has passed. So, but at the same time, history now, historians are actually, they're writing about contempt. Now, there's not such a great divide between history and anthro, and historians are writing about contemporary situations, and I don't think, but you can't, history writing has to be impersonal. It doesn't matter whether you like the person. Then it becomes history writing has to be impersonal. I mean, otherwise it's not considered a serious history at all. I mean, then it becomes like a...
There's a very thin line, and one should not cross the line, if I may say that, right?
Yeah.
Because there is a paid history also. When people write history for the sake of money.
Yes, but you can make out what is paid history and what is, not paid history. You can make that out.
But frankly, in fact, it's an interesting question, and let me give you one instance. I was actually at my Rhodes interview in 1999-2000 asked a question about the Bombay Pentangular tournament, which used to be played at that point in time, which was communally organized. Now, if I go back to the pages of history, and that's what I did, like you said, which was sacrosanct, which said it was communally organized and it resulted in heightened communal tension. Soni Swarabji was one of my interviewers, and he said, I was there, it was not communal. And he's the interviewer. He's sitting there, he's telling me it's not communal. Frankly, at that point in time, I challenged him saying, Mahatma Gandhi had written about it and I will take his word over yours. So I challenged him, but whoever has written in the 1930s, it is his bias. There are 3 points of view in 3 different newspapers. Which is the correct fact? Which is the correct story? That is again about your interpretation. 1936 Berlin Olympics, Leni Riefenstahl's film is considered the epitome of whatever. Now, Leni Riefenstahl was a Nazi, Reich, sponsored film personality documenting that games. So, what is the correct history? Like Shomishta said, is there a perfect history? I don't think a perfect history exists.
Absolutely.
Writing a story, especially in fiction, it's always about various characters, right? So, what I always face this problem that when I am writing a story, so it's only about those 2 characters. So, if I am writing a love story, maybe. So only those 2 characters who are in love, they will be. So introduction of characters, I always wonder how to introduce. Like even when I am watching movies, so there is some other character. There are so many characters, and at some point of time they are doing something for the protagonists or something. So how do you introduce those characters, various characters, apart from the protagonists?
The secondary characters, you mean?
Yes.
How do you introduce them?
How to introduce them and how to continue the flow of the story at the same time.
Well, one way to introduce the secondary characters is through how the primary characters are thinking or talking about them. How someone's talking about their sister, who is not, maybe that person remains in the background, but appears sometimes. Or for instance, in my book, Menoka has hanged herself. Menoka, the book opens with Menoka, who is this heroine, top heroine with the studio of that time. The book opens on the night of 1st January, the first night of the new year, 1937, and Menoka hangs herself. News comes from the studio that Menoka has hanged herself. So Menoka is dead at the start of the book, but throughout the book, Menoka is a metaphor, and how people are thinking about her helps to flesh out who Menoka was. So that is the way you can, and she's while the book is called Menoka has hacked herself, she's not one of the main characters, she's a metaphor. Maybe like a secondary character. So one way to flesh out the secondary characters is how the main characters are thinking about him or her. That's what keeps, the flow going, and you don't have to do it at one go, okay, in these 2 pages I'm going to outline what this character is. No, that's what makes it more interesting, if it fleshes out through the book, little bit, because when you meet a person, do you know a person at one go? 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, it takes so many years to know a person. Like that in a book, if you flesh out the character little by little, and then if towards the end there is actually a little bit of a bang that you can, like, oh, this was something totally unexpected about the character, then it becomes so much more interesting.
So do you build them up completely, the secondary characters?
Whatever we said, research, imagination.
So again, a balance between both of them, right? So one last question from the gentleman.
Karuni and Kavita Kane has completely changed the way.
Could you be a little louder?
Yeah. I'm quite inspired by the works of Chitra Banerjee, Karuni and Kavita Kane. They have completely changed the way we look at the mythological characters. So if someone is planning to write a mythological fiction, we don't have people from that era, not at least in fashion, but to ask them questions. So how to go about the research of the houses during those eras, or maybe the upholstery, how they were, how the characters will behave.
So mythology is not something which I am, it's not my forte. I know as much about mythology as the man on the street, but I had a very interesting experience. I was moderating a panel at the Kolkata Times Day Fest. And my panelists were Anand Nilkantan, who has written the Bahubali series, and Satya Nayak, who has also he has written the historical mythological fiction. And I found it very interesting because, as I said, my forte on mythological fiction is not much, but I found it very interesting to interact with them. And so and Anand Nilkantan, he always writes from the point of view of the antagonist, Ravan or whoever. And and Ravan or Pali. So I asked Anand that two questions. Like what you said that it's distant times. How do we relate it to modern times? So I asked him that, and why is mythology so popular? So Anand said, and he is of course a very celebrated author, he said that in my village where I grew up, we never felt that mythology is very distant. There is a Ravan temple in our village. We used to regularly go there. And so it's a part of our life. So from there, I started relating it to my regular life and to what I see around me. And so that's how I started to plot, and that's how, and mythology is something which is, it's everlasting. It constantly plays out in our life, in our politics, in our social scenarios. So I guess, like Anand said, I related the temple to what was happening around me. You just have to mythology.
We are running short of time.
Yes.
I'm so sorry to cut down, but we need to wrap up this session.
So I hope I answered you a little bit.
Yes, and thank you so much, Sharmishta, for such an enriching session. I hope you all enjoyed the interaction too.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you. This has been a most rewarding session of quality stationery products. Created by Sanika Chowdhury.
Can we have a picture?